Today on Treading Spree, we're talking bike racks. I know, riveting. So you're just getting into mountain biking. You did your research, you set your price range, and you went out and find the bike that costs a little more than what you were supposed to spend. It's okay, we've all done it. Now you have to get all the other stuff that goes along with it. You went out and got a helmet, gloves, water bottles, maybe a hydration pack, some glasses, a pair of mountain bike shorts, a pair of knee pads, a spare tube, a multi-tool, pump, maybe even some of those sweet mountain bike specific shoes. And now your wife has left you, but you're ready to shred. So you start scoping the local trails and where you're gonna be riding this bike, and you realize, I need a way to transport my bike. So you go online and you price some bike racks and start to cry a little. This happened to me. I just about threw up when I finally saw the price on a quality bike rack. Luckily, this wasn't too much of an issue for me when I started riding because I had a pickup truck. But over time, needs change, vehicles change, and I don't have a truck anymore. I still have a solid alternate option in a cargo van that I use for work. The downside to that is that it's full of my work equipment, and I can't leave all that sitting in a van while it's parked at a trailhead unsupervised for several hours. I actually used to leave some of the equipment in there, but I came back from a ride once and there were marks all over my window as someone tried to smash it out. Kudos to Ford for making windows that are unbreakable. So anyway, unloading over 1,000 pounds of gear every time I want to ride is pretty inconvenient to say the least. The other downside to the van is that it's not the most pleasant to drive on long trips. It's loud on the inside, it's big, it's got low visibility, and it doesn't even have cruise control. I did add a bench into the cargo area so I can move the family in the van, but there's no windows back there and I always kind of felt bad about that. So that brings me to my other vehicle. It's a 2005 Jeep Wrangler. All the cool factor, none of the practicality. I've had this thing for about 2 years. Shortly after I bought it, I welded this steel basket onto the aftermarket rear tire carrier that came on the Jeep, just to add a little bit of extra storage since the trunk space in this thing is just big enough to fit a Subway sandwich. At about that same time, I was still fighting the idea of buying a bike rack. And after looking at my custom basket for a little while, I realized I could just hang bikes off of it and strap it down with one of these rubber straps. It's worked great ever since. I can put anywhere from 1 to 4 bikes on it, but honestly, anything more than 2 kind of starts to become a bit of a rig. The other thing is, once I get the family in this Jeep, there's room for nothing else. Additionally, it doesn't really like freeway speeds, so that thing's out for long trips. This brings me to our newest vehicle. We just picked up an SUV. It's easily big enough to fit the whole family. It's got enough cargo space that we can fit all of our stuff. It's 4-wheel drive and it's about 1,000 times more comfortable to drive than the van. So we will 100% be taking this on all of our family trips moving forward. But bikes, what about the bikes? We have to bring the bikes. Now I don't really have a choice but to bite the bullet and buy a bike rack. So, in true Chris fashion, I went from complaining for 5+ years about the cost of a bike rack to then going out and buying one of the most expensive bike racks known to man. This is the one-up Super Duty Double bike rack. I've always heard that these racks are the best in the business. So if I'm finally gonna take the plunge and get one, I'm gonna go all in and buy the one that's supposed to last forever. Not only is the 2-bike version of this rack pricey, but then you have to buy the add-ons to make it a 3 or 4-bike carrier, and that almost doubles the price of the rack. But I do have to say, this thing is sick. It's all anodized or powder-coated aluminum. There's no plastic on it that's gonna get crusty after a few years in the sun. So I have high hopes that it will last a long time. The hitch bar has this really cool anti-wobble tensioner that tightens with a special Allen key. It takes all the play out of the rack in the receiver. This model also came with a sweet 1-up branded hitch bar lock, so it can't be removed without a key. This is called a tray style rack because the bike tires sit in a tray on the rack and it clamps onto the tires. So there won't be any parts rubbing on your precious carbon fiber. It's got 4 positions, 2 for stowing on the back of the car, one for towing with bikes and the other one for rear hatch access. The really great part about this rack is how quick it is to load and unload the bikes. Now, as stoked as I am on this setup, there are still some things that I'm not mega pumped on. It doesn't have any security features to hold the actual bike onto the rack, which is a little surprising. I know those cable systems on the other racks are only so effective, but it at least keeps somebody from being able to just snag the bike and run off with it. For the money, I kind of expect a slick integrated locking system. Another thing about this rack is now I have a rack. I need to have a place to store it, and it's heavy as... This is supposed to be on the lighter side of the tray style racks, but I really have to buckle in to pick this thing up. Now these next gripes are sort of specific to my situation with my Jeep. We did get it mainly for the SUV use, but since I have it, I'm gonna be using it on the Jeep. But with the spare tire and the basket overhead, I'm not able to use the tray that's closest to the cab. Additionally, the rack doesn't stick out far enough for me to stow it vertically if I were to leave it on the back of the Jeep. It would only go in its second setting, which is sort of a diagonal, but still out of the way kind of storage. Neither of these are deal breakers to me. I don't really see myself ever needing to transport 4 bikes because if I'm sticking 4 people in this Jeep, it's gonna be pretty uncomfortable anyway. And I'd probably take the SUV. I shot all this dialogue a few weeks ago and then shot all the B-roll to cut in shortly after. While I was demonstrating how my bike doesn't fit on the tray closest to the cab, I finally had the bright idea to put one of the kids' bikes in that spot instead, which solved the issue. Imagine that. I'm striking that gripe from the record. I'm glad this obvious idea finally came about because a few weeks ago, my boys and I met up with a friend and his son for a shred. My oldest son, having no idea where he was going, ended up leading him down a trail to the bottom of a valley, which would have taken them more than an hour to climb out of. But luckily, I was able to go rescue them with the Jeep. Awesome. I got to be a hero and blow the dust off the 4-wheel drive, and the rack performed flawlessly through rough terrain and a steep hill climb. Another benefit to the clamping mechanisms on this rack is that it gives you the ability to shift the bikes back and forth from driver's side to passenger side so you can find a fit where all the bikes aren't touching each other. It's pretty sweet. Alright, let's wrap this thing up. So those are some relatively minor complaints that are just specific to my Jeep. I'm sure I could get some kind of extender to make it come out a little bit further, but then I would sort of lose that anti-wobble feature. So that's my newest purchase. After running through the logic about 1,000 times in my head, it makes sense to spend the money on a nice rack considering how expensive the bikes are that are gonna be riding on it. Plus, the added bonus of this rack potentially outlasting my own body's ability to mountain bike is another motivating factor. So that's it for this week. Thanks for watching my video about a bike rack. Since this is a mountain bike channel and this video featured exactly 0 seconds of riding, here's a quick clip of me riding a bicycle. All right, that's it for me. I'll see you next week. Freaking video about a bike rack.